we had a previous situation during this war where Joe Biden had one conversation with Benjamin Netanyahu, and he forced him to allow people back to the north, to allow aid back in to the north, and even have certain Israelis being released, certain Palestinians, being released in line with the ceasefire talks. That happened before, and that shows you how capable the United States administration is. If the US administration wants to do something and actually try and find a solution, actually put some pressure on Israel to reach a solution, they can. They can. They choose not to. They choose not to. They choose to continue to supply the arms to them, even though they're committing war crimes and a genocide. And they choose to give them urgent aid. So far, in the past year, the United States has given Israel over 26 billion in military aid, emergency funding, bombs, explosives, and now they signed another deal for new F-15 fighter jets with Israel. However, they are saying that this report now is worrying some in Israel, and this is the report that I wanted to share with you. It was initially published, like I said, on Channel 12, and then it was later on published on their website. In reference to what happened previously between Lloyd Austin, and they're also talking about the fact that we have an administration, the Biden administration, that is about to go soon. So they're not necessarily going to calculate too much. And for those of you who are not aware, in 2015-16, just before Donald Trump came to power, we had Barack Obama. Barack Obama had certain delays in his final term. There were frictions between him and Benjamin Netanyahu. Many in Israel called him a big enemy of Israel. And he had certain delays when it comes to shipments. So I think from what we've seen so far, I mean, the most that the United States administration would actually do is delay. It's not can, it's would, because they can indeed cut all the lifeline of this genocide state and not support them with anything. But from the pattern that we saw, the only thing that they've done before is delay. So delay certain shipments to use certain leverage. And one big example was the fact that Joe Biden and his administration said earlier on that they're going to prevent Israel from getting the heavy Mk-84 bombs, but they're going to continue to support them with the defensive, what they call as defensive weapons for Israel to be able to defend itself, as if this term exists. You know, they don't have defense. These people are aggressors. They establish their existence on occupation, on ethnic cleansing, on terrorizing. So they don't have a right to defend themselves. You know, that's why they constantly repeat, you know, Israel's right to exist and Israel's right to defend themselves. Just to let you know or remind you, if you already know, Israel does not have a right to exist as it does now. And Israel also doesn't have a right to defend itself. From who exactly? From the people who it occupies? But of course, that's the situation that we have here. Now they went to the report and the threat coming from Lloyd Austin, knowing that Lloyd Austin is going to leave. Lloyd Austin is most likely going to leave. We're going to have a new administration in January. And when it comes to the Democrats, then of course there's the standard policy, the standard foreign policy of the United States administration when it comes to Israel. But it's not like they're too interested, especially seeing that Netanyahu was quite rude with them. I mean, my goodness, Israel can be so rude with even its closest ally, the United States of America. You'll have statements of them criticizing the US, saying, yeah, we know they support us, but with all due respect, we know what's best for us. They don't know. And then other figures in Israel saying, we need to develop our own weapons now and be self-sufficient and not trust the goyim, including the Americans. So very, very rude, even with the United States administration that has been supporting them all along. Extremely rude and extremely arrogant. So the worry now is from the fact that the administration might do something with certain delays or what have you that will put Israel in a bit of a tight corner before Donald Trump arrives, assuming that, it's confirmed what Trump's policy is going to be. Okay. Now, generally, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, when it comes to Israel, you're a slave. You kneel down and lick their boots and do whatever they demand you to do. It's like that AI generated image of both the Republicans and the Democrats kneeling down to Satan. That's how it is when it comes to Israel. We haven't seen anything different, But of course, when there's a change, like with the case of Obama previously, they can delay stuff. I mean, they can do stuff that will give Israel a bit of a headache before a new administration comes in. And again, Donald Trump had big promises, we're going to stop all wars and we'll see about that. So Channel 12 reported this, the U.S. firm message to Israel. They call this the firm message from the United States to Israel. Increase humanitarian aid to Gaza or we will limit arms shipments. Okay, limit arms shipments. Some people called it an embargo previously. But again, when it comes to the limitation, like I said, you're talking about most likely certain delays that could affect certain things in a limited manner. Defense Minister Austin delivered an unequivocal message to the incoming Defense Minister Israel Katz to bring up the issue of humanitarian aid to Gaza for an urgent discussion in the cabinet. According to senior American officials, the U.S. sees significant gaps in the implementation of its demands on the humanitarian issue and warned that if Israel does not increase significantly the scope of aid, Washington will be forced to impose restrictions on arms shipments. In his first conversation with U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, the incoming Defense Minister Israel Katz received an unequivocal message. They must significantly increase the aid or the U.S. will limit arms and ammunition shipments to Israel. This is what we published tonight, Saturday evening in the Weekend News. The ultimatum comes against the backdrop of the 30 days allotted in the letter sent to Israel by senior American government officials. And while the Americans note that there has been a certain increase in the scope of aid, they are still not satisfied with the pace and manner of implementing their demands. Now, talking about the actual conversation coming from Lloyd Austin to Israel Katz, Lloyd Austin also had a conversation with the sacked defense minister or genocide minister, Yoav Gallant, and he expressed his shock and the gratitude, to Yoav Gallant, and he was very surprised from the move coming from Benjamin Netanyahu. So clearly there's some bitterness there because Lloyd Austin or the administration, they had, of course, this relationship, and from their perspective, it's more work to bring a new person in, have that handover, try and make everything clear from the beginning. It's as if you're dealing with a new person from the get-go, or hiring someone new and giving them the adequate training. Although there are differences, of course, when it comes to positions in these countries, but there is more work to be done on the American side. Of course, Israel, from Netanyahu's perspective, he viewed it as an opportunity. He believed that Trump was coming, and that, well, I can change the defense minister now because they're going to probably have a new defense minister soon anyway, and I'll take advantage and do it on the election eve. They continued, dear defense minister, and what I wanted to say with that is, by the way, this could be a translation to the bitterness in the conversation that Lloyd Austin had with the incoming Israeli genocide minister, Yisrael Katz. Katz, who officially took office this week in place of Yoav Gallant, held his first conversation with the American Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin. In the conversation, along with an initial introduction and a conversation of politeness, Austin delivered a poignant message regarding the issue of humanitarian aid to Gaza. And here in Hebrew, the Israeli defense minister is quoted saying, Israel wants to work in coordination with the matter, but the problem is Hamas is stealing the stuff and selling it in really high prices, and we want to make sure that the aid is getting to the civilians, and we are working with other Arab countries to make sure that it gets in the Gaza Strip and it reaches those who actually need it. Does anyone have a tissue for me to cry? For me to cry and drop a tear? Israel Katz is saying, they are very worried because Hamas are stealing the aid, and Israel wants to make sure the aid goes in. That's why they don't get aid in. They don't want Hamas to steal it. And Austin here responds as well, is saying that it's been 30 years since we sent the letter to the Prime Minister. I ask you to raise this to a discussion in the cabinet. I am happy to hear that you have increased the levels of aid lately, and Israel needs to continue and ensure there won't be any harm or damage to people who are not involved in the war in Gaza. This is just to elaborate these two sentences here in Hebrew. The message refers to the letter that Austin and Secretary of State Anthony Blinken sent to Israel in the middle of last month with a clear stipulation. If significant steps are not taken within 30 days to increase the humanitarian aid to Gaza, the U.S. will prevent the transfer of arms and ammunition to Israel in accordance with the U.S. Aid Act. Now, with the expiration of the set deadline, the U.S. government wants to see results. It's been 30 days since we sent the letter to the Prime Minister. I ask that you bring this up, its contents, to a discussion in the cabinet. And they continued, despite Israel's commitments to improving the situation, American officials said that in their view, there are still significant gaps in the implementation of their requests on the humanitarian issue in Gaza. The ultimatum remains. If the US is not convinced that there has been a fundamental change in the arrival of humanitarian aid to the Strip, it will be forced to impose restrictions on the transfer of weapons and armaments to Israel in the next 2 months. What does this mean? According to this article, according to reports, the U.S. is concerned about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Blinken and Austin claimed that the IDF evacuation orders have led to the concentration of approximately 1.7 million Palestinians in a small area in Mawasi, exposing them to disease. In addition, international aid organizations find it difficult to meet the needs, and aid trucks are delayed at the border crossings. According to the Americans, the amount of aid that had entered Gaza in September is the lowest in the last year. Last month, they demanded that Israel take concrete steps to improve the situation within 30 days. And here they elaborate what is the American Assistance Act. It's an act that regulates the transfer of military aid from the US to foreign states, including Israel. In this framework, Israel receives annual aid of $3.8 billion, of which $500 million is designated for active air defense. The law allows the American government to condition the transfer of aid on meeting certain conditions. April 2024, a special aid package was approved for Israel following the war in Gaza. Again, confirming that the United States, if they want, they can stop everything. Why? Because if the United States only said, our military aid is tied with you sticking to international law, that's it. Nothing else. They would have cut the aid from a very long time ago. If the United States administration acted within international law and said that all of our military aid to Israel and any other country, but to Israel in this regard now, is tied or is on the condition that this country respects and follows international order, international law to a T, to the exact details of all international law, which would prevent Israel from doing any of what it does, by the way. It must protect civilians, must protect hospitals, must allow all aid in. Even if they give evacuation orders, they would be forced to protect and feed the people who choose to remain alongside all of the rules of war that are thrown in the garbage. And that, no one acts as if they mean anything when it comes to Israel. The rules of war, conventional war, that is, although generally speaking, Israel, supported by the United States empire, they have never conducted conventional wars ever in their life. All of their wars were unconventional wars because all of them included high levels of psychological warfare, mass manipulation, and propaganda, and they resorted to acts and actions that are illegal internationally when you are conducting acts of war. Unlike who? Unlike Iran, unlike the resistance, who stick to international law more than the United States and Israel. How much money does the special assistance include, and what does it include? The aid package includes $26.4 billion for the Israeli arena, of which $14 billion is direct military aid to Israel. The amount is divided as follows: $4 billion for the procurement and arming of the Iron Dome and David Sling systems, $2 billion for a shield system, Iron Beam, a laser system, to intercept mortar bombs and rockets, which is cheaper than the Iron Dome, $4 billion to replenish supplies that the US has already transferred to Israel, such as artillery shells and bombs. And then, MK-84 and 83, the ones that they land on hospitals and children and women. What does the American arms embargo mean? This is the interesting part here. How far are they going to go? How far are they going to go? An American arms embargo on Israel would be a dramatic step with significant consequences. Israel is highly dependent on American military aid, especially in areas such as air defense and advanced equipment such as F-35 aircraft. Stopping the supply of weapons and spare parts could harm the IDF's operational capabilities. And here are the demands. What are the steps that the USA demands from Israel? Blinken and Austin listed a number of demands from Israel. Here are the demands. Regular transfer of 358 trucks daily to Gaza Strip through all 4 current border crossings. Opening of the 5th border crossing. They mean most likely Rafah. And that would include withdrawal, because Egypt already said we're not willing to deal with an Israeli authority running the Palestinian side. There has to be a Palestinian side. carrying out humanitarian ceasefires throughout Gaza for at least 4 months, allow the Palestinians in Mawasi to move east and away from the coastal area before winter. The cessation of the operation to isolate the north of Gaza Strip. Official announcement that there is no intention to evacuate residents of the northern Gaza Strip to the southern Gaza Strip. Now, according to that report, you're not just talking about aid, but you are also talking about other conditions. And I wanted to highlight a couple of problems here in this attack, in these demands. Excuse me. They are asking the cessation of the operation to isolate the north of Gaza Strip, right? And they're talking about aid going to Gaza through all four current border crossings, but they're not speaking explicitly about the condition for that aid to reach the north. This is the problem. So opening the borders and getting the aid through them is fine, but where will that aid end? Where will it reach? That's the most important thing here. And they're not explicitly saying that it needs to reach North Gaza. That's the problem. However, the fact that they are talking about the cessation of the operation to isolate the north, official announcement that there is no intention to evacuate the citizens of Northern Strip to the southern Gaza Strip, these things are important. And again, I'm not sure if they meant it by saying the four border crossings, the aid going in, but that again is not enough. When you talk about a demand from a country that is this malicious, you have to be very specific when it comes to that. And again, the reason that why I shared this is because we had a point previously where Israel indeed submitted to the will of the United States administration. So, of course, in the grand scheme of things, the United States supported this genocide. Without the US, there is no Israel and there is no genocide. They did not apply enough pressure. The United States administration and other Western countries allowed this genocide to happen by not accepting a ceasefire that was proposed by China, Russia, and Brazil just after the 7th of October of 2023. If all of these countries, the Western countries, agreed and pushed for a ceasefire, that would have been been confirmed by the United States, United Nations Security Council, and ensured an enforcement process would take place, and they could have done that. We would have not been in this situation. Instead, we saw the Western establishment countries legitimizing, refusing to call for a ceasefire, allowing Israel, giving Israel the complete okay to go ahead with a full-blown genocide. We had people justifying the cutting off of aid and water and electricity, like Keir Starmer. And we had the United States establishment and other countries as well continuing to support Israel. But the most important country when it comes to that is the United States. So there is no denying that, they enabled all of this. And there's also, though, no denying that if they did want to take a different course, that they should be taking, the United States should be taking that course, the administration should take that course. They could review what they're doing and just stop the support. And like I said, tie your foreign military aid with adherence and commitment to international law. So the country that I support, with military aid, and you're sending billions of taxpayers' money. What are we, living in a cartel? That's why I call them the genocide cartel, because there's no law, there's nothing. You're stealing taxpayers' money, and you're sending it to a country committing a genocide. How does that work exactly? You know, what are we talking about in terms of legalities? Like, how is this even legal? This is a very big question. How is it legal for the United States administration to steal money from the American people in the form of taxation and sending it to another country on the condition of course, buying it from US organizations to support the United States military industrial complex? How is that even legal? This shouldn't be legal. This should be illegal. But the United States, there is no denying that they can stop, even with all of that and all of these flaws and loopholes and alleyways, they always have them when it comes to foreign aid. They can apply pressure like they have before in what we labeled at the time. I personally labeled it the semi-ceasefire that we have. We had a couple of weeks where we had short-term relief. You know, we didn't see the level of devastation that we're seeing now. People were going back to the north. We had certain prisoners being released. We had aid going in to the most northern parts of Gaza. And all of these things happened only after Biden had a conversation with Benjamin Netanyahu. Will that happen now? Would they be able to use it as leverage, knowing that a new administration is coming soon? Will it be effective? Will Israel listen to them? Or will Benjamin Netanyahu completely ditch everything to do with any United States demands and just take the aid, and the only thing that he would potentially do is maybe talk here and there, although now the reports are saying that there is nothing happening when it comes to negotiations for a ceasefire. All of that will be visible. These would be things that we can see or would be able to see within the next week. If Israel, or not if Israel, if we see from the ground, this is what we focus on, the Palestinian residents of the northern part of Gaza receiving aid, if we see that happening, if they get the relief that they need, and that becomes a bit more regular, we can see that, or we would be able to confirm that this pressure worked to an extent. However, if we don't see that, this would tell you that no, Benjamin Netanyahu is not looking for any solution, and he's only looking to expand, and things will only get worse before they can potentially get better.